All right, so it looks like now it's my turn to talk about the secrets of product storytelling. And you'll notice that none of these things are secrets. You've basically learned them like, in 7th grade, when you were 13 or 14. These are not secrets. But I thought, because I can do whatever I want because Morgan's not here and she left, I thought I would, if it's okay, I'm gonna borrow you, Ryan. Come here, Ryan. Let me show you. I'm gonna show everybody something real quick that maybe you have never seen before under the hood. Take a look at this. Take a look at this. Now, you've probably never seen these before, but if you're ever on any set that does production, you're gonna see them. Now, hold on. There's more. Look, like you just saw one. Look, there's one right there, and there's also one right there. So I'm gonna tell you a story time here. There was one time, because you probably have no idea what this does. We had one of these many years. I had no idea what it did. One year, I was in Belgium with Golnaz, who leads Channel 9. And we were at this conference, and there was a guy who was going to give a talk. His name is Scott Guthrie. If you don't know who he is, he's basically like my boss, like 15 levels up, right? He runs all of Azure, and he was going to give a talk about Azure in Belgium. And our job, Golnaz and myself, our job was we need to stream this out so everyone can watch it. That was our job. So like our boss, 15 levels up, we need to stream this. And so we show up and we plug all the HDMIs and whatever's together, and we could not get a signal for the life of us. So imagine your boss, 15 levels up, the stream is not working and it's getting close. We started to get really worried. And we had one of these things with us. We didn't know what it did. And one of the people there in Belgium, he came over and he's like, oh, just use this thing. It's called a decimator, which makes no sense. He said, just use this thing. It turns out that in Europe, they use a video signal called PAL, P-A-L, and in North America, they use something called NTSC, and those frame rates / frequencies, whatever, are just not compatible with equipment from either part. It turns out that this thing, if you put one signal in and get another signal out, completely changes any signal to any frame rate from any signal to any framework. He plugged this in, magic, minutes before we had to stream this out. This little gal, saved our collective butts. And so if you go to any place that does production, you're gonna see one of those things. And you might never see one in your life. But that day, that thing literally saved our bacon. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this product, because you're not going to believe their website. Take a look at their website. This is their website. If you can this is their website. And the reason why they are so good is that this can be their website, and they will still sell 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 of these things to a ton of customers. This is their go back in there. This is how they sell their, and we do this all the time. For example, you see here the 4K scaling engines can scale and or frame rate convert between 351 input formats and 57 output formats, allowing for an amazing 20,007 possible format conversion. This is how we generally sell products. How we should tell stories is what I did at the beginning, right? And notice that it's very different. We are sometimes so committed to what we built as opposed to the stories that we tell, that sometimes we launch products that just, in a way that just doesn't work, right? So let's talk about the elements of a story that you've all seen since you were a kid. A good story has a protagonist, the hero, an antagonist, inciting action, conflict, and resolution. And you're probably thinking, well, cool story, bro. What does this have to do with my product? I'm so glad you asked. Notice that the story that I just told you is a product story about something called the decimator that everyone buys. Everyone buys this. If you're ever at any serious production thing, they will have like 10 of these things just laying around. You saw 3 here. There's another one over there too. They have like, 50 of them. It's like candy over here, and that's why I guess they're red. So in this particular story, the heroes of this story were me and Golnaz, mostly Golnaz, because she's awesome. The antagonist of this particular story was everyone who decided to have different video formats in Europe and North America. So those are the people. Always start with people. And you saw that from Travis, you saw that from Amanda, you saw that from Scott, you saw that from almost everybody. Donna presented this. We start from a people-centric area. These are the people. If you don't know who the people are for your product story, that should be like a flag should fly up. Oh, there's a problem. There's a problem. When you get into the story has to have these elements. We'll get into structure in a second. But a story has to have inciting action, conflict, and resolution. You saw that in the story that I had. We needed to stream our super bosses talk. I set the stage. We had conflict. The video format was incompatible. And the resolution was that the decimator decimated. It was a joke. Is that not funny? I thought it was funny. Decimated our problem by easily doing the conversion. And that was more compelling than saying we can convert between 20,007 combinations of things. This thing literally saved our bacon. We probably would have got in a lot of trouble. So the question is, how do I structure my story so that it's exciting? Well, one of the things that I did, and there's a really cool book called The Power of Moments, which Travis actually told me to read, that told us that moments are super important. And one of the ways to create a moment is to flip the script. So me laying on the floor, showing you stuff under tables is not what you were expecting, but it flipped the script. One of the other things you can do is you can disarm the audience automatically by recognizing who they are, where they are, and why they are. I do that. When I give a presentation, I always try to learn something in a language when I'm there. I always try to learn something about the culture. I always try to find a way to show that I have empathy for who the people are that this product is for. So let's talk about the structure, and we'll go through that. Exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and denouement. Let's talk about the exposition, the setup. The setup is super important. It should grab people right away. They should be able to see themselves in the setup. Now, if you're a video production person, you will see yourself in the setup of things not working, because in production, things never work the right way. Almost ever. In fact, if you ever ask someone about a show, they'll always say, well, it looked good from the outside. And there was some series of dumpster fires that happened. So a production person will right away empathize that Seth understands, because he's been in my shoes. That's how we set things up. We automatically establish a kinship between who I am and who it is that I'm talking to. The second thing is something called rising action. And the rising action for me is this concept produced by Clayton Christensen from Harvard Business School in a book called Competing Against Luck, called The Jobs to Be Done. Jobs to be done. And it's defined as the progress that our hero desires to make in a particular circumstance. The progress that I put hero, but they put customer. The progress that our hero desires to make in a particular circumstance. For us, the progress we wanted to make was we wanted to stream our boss talk so that everyone can learn about Azure, because that's our job. Now, if you have not done the work in trying to understand who the people are and what their job is to be done, your product is probably not going to work and your story won't. It doesn't matter how many features you have, doesn't matter how cool the UI is, if you're not helping your hero make the progress in their journey, it's not going to be a problem. By the way, in our stories, and I don't know why I didn't say this, the hero is always our customer. Always, always, always. It's easy. So when you're looking at structure, protagonist, always, 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 always the customer. Always the customer. So think about this. How do you figure out what the right job to be done is? You use the hypothesis progression framework that Travis was talking about. It turns out that we're all kind of talking about the same things, but from different perspectives. You have to actually sit down and watch a person do a job. Now, I'll give you an example. if you, and I used to do this because I was a consultant many years ago. First, I was still in college. I was a software consultant. I would walk in and I would look for immediately what are repetitive tasks that people are doing that I can make a computer do without them. It's not that I'm trying to take away their job. It's that I'm trying to up-level their job to things that are more important and higher priority. Like, for example, figuring out the people issues that might be in their organization. That's one example of me going in, looking, and finding a job to be done. You should also interview your customers. And when you interview them, you should ask them open-ended questions. Tell me about how you usually get food done, and food being just some random thing that they do. Well, we do this, this, and this, and this, and this. And this. Have you found that blah, blah, blah? Open-ended questions. Again, the rising action of anything in your product story is what is the exact job to be done. You should do that way before you even start making a product. And you saw Travis speak about that a lot. You saw Amanda talk about that a little bit as well. So let's talk about the climax, the uh-oh moment. This is the uh-oh. We have the characters. We put them together in the setup. We know what the job to be done is because it's been clarified and people have heard it and they now feel it. Now by the time you're at this point, they feel a connection because they know that you empathize with them and their job to be done. And then you hit the uh-oh moment. The job to be done is actually super hard. There's no way I can get this done. Whatever shall I do? Right? And you kind of, hopefully you saw that a little bit when I was doing the story, on the floor. It was pretty clear that we hit an uh-oh moment in our job. We could not do it. And we were going to be in huge trouble. And notice that that's where you're like, oh, what's going to happen? And this is the key. Now, again, this isn't marketing or selling or whatever. This is you telling the customer story through the lens of the sword, which is your product. So as students, as you're watching this and if you're doing an Imagine Cup thing and you're trying to do a pitch, your product or the thing that you're doing after you've done all the work in understanding the customer, understanding their job to be done, you've interviewed them, you've figured out a way to solve that problem, you've verified these hypotheses with your actual customers. In theory, at the end of this, your product is the sword with which they vanquish the foe. It's the superpower that enables your heroes or your customers to overcome all of the odds. It is the thing that helps the protagonist actually be the hero. And if your product cannot help the customer be the hero, you should go back because maybe there was a hypothesis that just wasn't validated properly. You should go back, you should ask some questions and get people really solid on understanding that your product will help vanquish the foe. And the denouement is, and this is the part that people probably miss a lot, is this notion of, well, what's the moral of the story? I didn't do a very good job of it on my other story, but if I was selling or if I wanted people to look at the decimator, I'd be like, if you go to our website, now you'll be able to see, but basically the main message of your story is meant to convey the theme, and specifically, what should people do with this information? It's the moral of the story. And you should always, you should never end a story with so go forth and do. Do what? It should be a smart request for something for the audience to do because they're bought in, right? Now you've already talked to them about how you know their story, how you know their job, and how you've given them a sword. Now, how do they hold it? What are they supposed to swipe at? How are they going to do this? And that's where you need to be smart about the call to actions. These call to actions need to be a smart, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Let's go through each one of these briefly. You need to specifically ask people to do something after that with that information. What am I supposed to do with this? Well, now, if you ever have a problem converting your signals or you can't get stuff to work, go to the website, download some information about the decimator, or you can buy it today using this link with a 40% discount code. Do you see that? Very specifically ask them to go to the website or to buy the product with a discount code. It's measurable. We know whether it's done or not. It's attainable. It's easy for people to do this. It's relevant to them because you've done the research on who you're talking to and what their job to be done is, and it's time bound. If you act now, you get a 40% discount, right? I know this kind of verges, it feels like marketing, it feels like sales, but if you've done the empathy work correctly, it's not. You're actually helping somebody. And I honestly don't mind paying for things that help me do what I need to get done. If there is a specific job that I need to do and their product helps me do it, I will buy it happily and I will tell people about it, which is really cool. So let's finish up with a summarization. And then let me tell you a little bit about what I work on and how I tell stories on what we work on. So the first is the stories always have a protagonist. Always your customer. Always, 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 always. Start with customer first. Start with empathy. Start with understanding. The antagonist is another person or set of people. Now, I need to be careful here because it's not that these are bad people. It's just that a situation has arisen in which there's a problem. For us, the antagonist was, for some reason, someone decided that video signals have to be different here than they are, and we're like, "Urgh." Or for example, and it doesn't mean that they're bad people. So don't ever think like these are villains. That's not how I think of it. Or for example, the antagonist might be your boss. Hey, you need to get this done in the next 2 weeks because we are seriously under. Doesn't mean your boss is a bad person. It means that you're under some bad constraints that are caused by a conflation of people. And I always try to like put people at the center of the story. The next is this notion of inciting action, which sets the story in motion. You got to set the stage. And when you set the stage, make sure that when you set the stage, it is something that the customer or the hero immediately identifies with. I'll give you an example. I gave a talk on cognitive search. And if you don't know what cognitive search is, it's a really cool way of building like your own custom search. It's like having Bing for your office. But the cool thing about this cognitive search is it's very intelligent about how it indexes stuff. And I started my story with, how many of you have a junk folder on your office share? And everyone was like, oh, I have that. How hard is it for you to find something? And what if you had to find something right now that was relevant, you know? And all of a sudden people are like, oh, I've been there. I've had that problem. How do we fix it? Right? And then we get to the conflict, which is like, you have to find this right now. And then finally the resolution. So the stories have all those. The structure, always do the setup, expositions, got to set it up. And again, it feels like I'm repeating these things, but with different, and there's a reason why. Always set up. The next one is this notion of rising actions, which is the job to be done. And then the climax is the uh-oh moment, can't do the job. Falling action, which is the product is the hero's sword that slays the monster, and denouement is the moral or the actual call to action. So look, I work in AI. That's my job. I'm a program manager in the AI platform group here at Microsoft, and our job is to help people have accessible AI. And this is how I tell the story. Right now, as you look around, everyone's like, oh, you should just use AI. Oh, and blockchain. We'll leave that for a different time. You should just use AI. And right away, everyone's like, well, but what does that mean? Is it too mathy? Is it something for me? Do I need to learn vector calculus? And it's a struggle. The first job to be done that I've identified with AI is, is this something even that will benefit our company? And so let me tell you how I go about doing that. With AI, and I know this is going to be a little reductive, but I'm okay with it. AI is a huge set of things. When people talk about AI today, they're usually talking about machine learning. And what machine learning does is it converts your company's nouns into verbs. What does that even mean? It basically converts data into functionality. That's it. So if you have data at your office that you think you can extract some functionality out of, that's what machine learning is perfect at. And you're probably wondering, well, hold on. What if I don't have enough data? Well, you can either build your own AI or you can use someone else's. For example, I used to work at a company called DevExpress, and I remember this guy came up to me in one of the booths because I was a booth guy. And he was like, I could totally build this grid. And I'm like, I'm 100% sure you can totally build a data grid. Everyone's looked at grids, right? Since Excel. And I was like, I'm 100% sure you could build a data grid. But is that your primary job? Because if you build it, you will have to support it for the rest of your life. I built software like 40 years ago, it feels like, and people still call me about it. And so he said no, and he's like, no, how much does it cost? I was like, oh, it's $2,000. And to him, $2,000, it might be a lot of money, but $2,000 is not a lot of money for the rest of your life, which was pretty cool. And so with AI, you can use models, and Microsoft has a bunch of pre-built models that you could totally just use and try out called cognitive services. If you want to build your own artisanal free-range model, we have tools for that as well. So if you think about AI, and particularly machine learning, machine learning is converting data into functionality. Microsoft can give you really good models that you can just build, AI models, or you can build your own.